Conan, if you really get down to it, he is living in a world that is very much the kind of a world he would live in. And thereby we get to see a lot of it through the blank slate that is his perception. Because but it also is very fitting, because it's the different aspects of the barbaric world. Kane is interesting because he's a man out of his world.
Hey, you Stygian dogs. In this, part 4 of a conversation with Conan's compatriots, Steve Saffel and Brian D. Anderson, we spend a lot of time talking about the Conan the Barbarian film, the Heroic Legends series, and dealing with editing notes from Heroic Signatures. Steve discusses Michael Moorcock's notion of the Eternal Champion, and the topic of conversation moves on to Solomon Kane. I think you'll enjoy this one.
Oh man, I said when I was at we were me and Steve Sterling were on the 90th anniversary Conan 90th anniversary panel at Dragon Con 2 years ago, and I sit down there and I put in for that panel because I just love Conan, and surprisingly enough they chose me. So I'm sitting there between those two men who combined know everything there is to know about Conan ever. And I'm like going, oh, hell, why did I do this?
But again, one of the things I really wanted to do was include some illustrations so that we had the whole Weird Tales thing going on too.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
So I liked the idea. This is one of my few Brundage covers. Those are tough to get these days. They're expensive.
I see that cover online all the time.
Yeah, it's kind of the go-to.
It's one of her most famous. I still think my favorite ones are the J. Allen St. John covers, though.
I tell you what's weird is when you start reading. If you saw the movie, the Schwarzenegger movie, which I love, but I love it for what it is, not what it's not. But all the little things that. Because that's not canon. That's not, nothing about that. But there are little pieces of that of that movie that are part of Howard's stories. Like when he bites the neck out of the vulture when he's crucified.
Right.
That comes from when Valeria says, if I were in hell and you fought on, I would, I would come to fight by your side. Forget the exact quote, but it wasn't Valeria who said that. That was Belit who said that, and Belit actually did, just like Valeria, come back and kind of save his ass right at the last second. So it was kind of cool that whoever made that movie did actually know the material well enough to include some little snippets, kind of like a little tip of the hat to the source material. So I always liked that about that movie.
I hate to say it, but the movie is my least favorite thing in the whole Conan world, because and it's funny because years ago I worked on a science fiction convention where we had Elspeth de Camp and Catherine de Camp as guests, and at the time they said there's been interest in a Conan movie. And there's this actor who nobody's heard of named Schwarzenegger, who they're looking at to be the lead. And that seemed really exciting at the time, especially coming from Sprague. But
you could realize Schwarzenegger can't speak English.
Well, the bottom line is we don't know anybody who speaks Sumerian too.
Well, he was in an English-speaking movie. I've seen interviews with him. It's like, I didn't say much, I didn't do much, and I was stoic because I didn't really speak really good English. Yeah. So they, which was a really smart move if you think about it. They didn't make him do things that he was incapable of doing. They kept him within his limited range, and it worked. I know you say it's your least favorite, but it did work as a movie. You know what I mean?
And it's
I'm a Howard purist.
but there's also the situation, though. I mean, you could probably argue that the movie is the reason for perhaps part of the reason for the longevity now and for the
Yes.
continued interest in the character, right?
It's
Even though
what
it's not Conan.
got me into it, you know what I mean? See it. I wasn't able to see it because it was an R-rated movie, and my parents wouldn't let me go see it. I think it was like 12 or 13 at the time it came out.
Yeah,
and so, you know, I'm 50, about to be 52 in a few days. So I was, you know, a young teenager at the time, and there was this yogurt shop that, in the parking lot in the strip mall across the street from where I lived, and they had laser discs, and he was one of those laser disc guys that, like, any laser disc that comes out, he immediately bought it. And he had Conan the Barbarian. He didn't give a shit if we were watching it. He didn't care if we were underage. We were buying yogurt, and it's not like he was showing us porn. You know, it was just that. And I remember watching that movie, and I thought it was the greatest movie I'd ever seen in my life. It was just so good. And I'm like, and I wanted more. And that's what that was part of what prompted me when the next time I went to B. Dalton, to when I saw, because there was a row dedicated to Conan books, right? And that's why I bought that immediately. I'm like, yeah, I'm buying this immediately, and and that's why when I saw him in the comic stores, now I wanted Conan, and that. So, love or hate the movie, you're 100% right. Thanks to that movie, Conan is on the tip of and part of the zeitgeist, part of the culture of fantasy. And like I said, it was arguably the progenitor to grimdark. It was how now we got all this new sword and sorcery coming out, and that movie kind of brought it back, you know, and it was, you know, from an underground sort of like, you know, you got to kind of be in the know to know about it. To everybody knows Conan.
Right. Before that, it would have been the Lancer books of the 70s. And I didn't say I don't like the movie. It's my least favorite, and it gives me an advantage. For many decades, I waited until we got the perfect Captain America movie, and I'm still waiting because we still have the opportunity to get the perfect Conan movie.
Well, you know, when they redid it, I think in their second attempt, they got the character of Conan a little bit more right. That Conan was a partier. He laughed. He had friends. You know, he was not. Conan wasn't this stoic, you know, character. If he drank hard. He fought hard, but he also partied hard too.
Yeah.
And I think they got that a little more right with the second movie, but I found the story to be lacking. I think they should have gone back to maybe doing one of the original stories, or an early, you know, or maybe diving into his actual origins as opposed to try to redo again. His father gets killed by it. His father,
I don't know what they were thinking with that movie.
I mean, his father doesn't die in the original. As far as I ever read, his father was still alive when he left Samaria. As far as I know. I mean, what they did is, you know, I guess they wanted to recapture some of the magic from the original movie. And I'm like, yeah, you really didn't need to do that, because this is a whole new generation. You could have told a story a little more that respected the source material a little more. Like I said, they did better with the character of Conan.
Well, also remember the movie making world. How many times do we have to revisit the origin of Superman? How many times do we have to revisit the origin of Spider-Man? And so in many ways, Conan is better if you just simply drop somebody into the middle of the Hyborian age and make it fantastic.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I don't see why you're 100% right. I've asked myself that same exact question. Why not just take Conan as a character? Because it's not like he's some unknown entity that nobody knows about. You know, he's not some. It's not like you're going to start, you know, taking Neo from the Matrix and starting him at the second movie. You know, where you don't know what the hell the one is. You know, and which, oh God, that's the discussion I hate. I hate even thinking about. when they turned them into batteries instead of a neural net, which was the original idea for that. It was originally supposed to be humans were a neural net, because anything would make a better battery than a human, like a battery.
Well, like I said, I think we still have the opportunity to do the perfect Conan movie and do more, because you have his entire life. I kind of am glad that they're not going to go straight into a King Conan movie, because that's sort of like giving away the punchline without telling the joke.
Well, I mean, they were as Trey Parker and Matt Stone would put it, they're sitting there chomping on their member berries, and they want to bring Schwarzenegger back, and the only way you bring Schwarzenegger back is as a king, because he damn sure ain't gonna be, he's damn sure you can't cast him as young Conan.
That's true.
So they're trying to recapture something that doesn't need to be, that's fine where it's at. It doesn't need to be recaptured. Yeah. Do something original, do something different. One of the reasons I didn't choose to lead either into or out of any of the original Howard stories, because I wanted to do something in the Conan world that was uniquely mine. Right. I wanted to tell my version of a Conan story using, of course, a faithful character, but I wanted to tell a story that I told. I didn't want to.
That's one of the reasons that we approached a really wide variety of authors, in particular for the short fiction, and didn't stick purely to Conan. We have Conan, but we have Bran McMorn, we have Solomon Kane, we have Belit, we have Elborak. What's that?
I'm looking forward to Belit.
Yeah, we've got a couple of stories with Belit in it, and I think that the advantage to that is that there are so many different characters. Also, a lot of people don't realize that Howard. Okay, I don't know how many folks are going to be familiar with Michael Moorcock's what's he called? The Eternal Champion. The whole idea of the Eternal Champion was that Elric and Hawkmoon and Corum and even Jerry Cornelius were all aspects of this character named the Eternal Champion, each living on a different plane of existence. So Moorcock did a multiverse before most people did multiverses. But one of the things that I did as I was getting ready to do the Conan stuff was I read this issue of Weird Tales, and I decided to read it in the issue of Weird Tales. I really liked the idea of reading the original, but there was a story in here. Let me see if I can find it now. It is, where is it now? There it is, Kings of the Night. And Kings of the Night actually has a scene where Bran McMorn is trying to stop the Romans from taking Britain, and one of the tribes that Bran McMorn has united has lost their king, and they will not go into battle without a king. And so Bran McMorn's shaman brings a king from the past, and here's Kings of the Night. And in Kings of the Night, the king that the shaman draws down through time is Kull of Valyria.
Oh, cool. And those aren't originals, are they?
These are.
Oh my God.
So the thing about this is that Howard was doing the multiverse concept decades before Moorcock.
Well, I know that he did stuff with Kull the Conqueror, and it didn't get the reception. And his idea, because he was setting it 30,000 years ago, and then this was in the anthology, the collection that I read, and they had some essays in that were done, and said that because it was 30,000 years ago, that's why he did the Hyborian Age, which was 12,000 years ago.
Well,
And
and again, I'm not certain how the audience, how much the audience would be aware of that.
yeah.
I will say, as I recall, the Phoenix on the Sword, which was 91 years ago. Well, the date was December 1932. So
Hmm.
this is the anniversary month.
Hmm.
And as I understand it, the Phoenix on the Sword was began as a Cull story
Yeah, yeah.
and became a Conan story. But somehow he really like he lit a fire with Conan.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I know he had the. I was what was amazing to me is he had this brilliant correspondence with H.P. Lovecraft, and what we were talking about earlier with modern technology and the way people write and the way things are done now, and his being cut off from the basically any kind of culture, cultured society in nowhere, Texas. Can you imagine having a meaningful correspondence with anyone? You don't get. It's not like sending an email where if somebody doesn't answer you in a day or two, you wonder, did they get my email? You're not going to hear back from this person.
Or in your
For
case, or in your case, Brian, if you write an email and you don't hear back immediately, by the time I get up the next morning, there are 5 more.
yeah, you know, hey,
You are the consummate communicator.
yes, I am. But you know what? I always meet my deadlines.
Oh, you certainly do.
Well, that was what was really funny is like I get the edits back for the child, and because they wanted me to adjust the dialogue and they wanted to make Conan a little more sexually aggressive in one part, um, they show his lust a little bit. They were like, these are significant changes. We'll give you several weeks. I'm like, I'll have it back tomorrow.
That
You know
was
what I mean?
one that was a funny aspect. I think the heroic signatures folks aren't as used to doing the prose because they were really worried about some changes that they wanted Steve Sterling to do in his novel, and they came back to me and they were sending me these notes saying, "Oh my God, I'm not sure we're going to make the deadlines. This is going to be these huge changes." And I called Steve and I told him what they wanted, and he said, "Well, that'll take an afternoon."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's like I basically went through the whole thing, changed question marks into periods.
You're not supposed to tell them that though. Make sure they don't know. It's
Well,
like Scotty. I gotta do
exactly,
it, Captain.
it's the Scotty talking to Geordie dialogue.
yeah, it's like it was really just making just a couple minor adjustments to the dialogue and adding a little 2 paragraphs of Conan lusting after a servant, that's where they said they wanted it. And so I'm like, okay, well, not a problem. He lusted after a little bit. Nothing. I didn't have to write any sex scenes or anything like that. So it just went a little bit of flirtation, blah blah blah.
Yeah,
And going. I took a few hours to get away from it. So then I reread it to make sure I liked what I'd written and the way I'd written it anyway, and make sure I like the flow of the prose. I'm sure it flowed in nicely with the rest of it, and that was it.
well,
But
with
to hear
Steve, yeah,
to
with
hear them
Steve
to
because
hear
he
them
has
tell the
a
story to him back, it was like, oh my God, they're in a panic.
with Steve because he has a life and because he wanted to give it a little bit of thought. I think instead of an afternoon, it took him an entire weekend
Oh wow. Yeah,
on
like
a novel.
oh, these changes you want, they're not that critical. you
It,
know,
yeah,
yeah. Well, it's only an 11,000 word short. It's not like it's not like I'm editing 150,000 words or something.
yeah.
I think it took me less time to edit it than it would have to read it.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, tell you what, man, this has been a wonderful journey, though. Steve, it wasn't for Steve, I would have never gotten the opportunity to do this either. And that's what I'll tell you. That's where me being on that panel, and because my agent knows Steve, Lori McLean.
Yep.
And when I told her I was going to be be on there, and I'd heard through Steven Savile, because I co-authored the Akiri novels. There's a picture with Steven, and he is the one that told me about it. And I'm like, dude, I want in. I want in.
And Steve is doing a story too. Yeah.
Yeah. He's writing one of the Solomon Kane ones. I actually got to read that. He sent it over to me so I could take a look at it. I just made a couple suggestions on the because I'm from the Deep South. Some of the biblical language he was using was a little off, and I said, okay, here's where. And when you're in the Bible Belt, you know how people refer to, I said, no, you want to call him the Almighty. You don't want to call.
Well, Kane, with his deep Puritan background, is a fascinating one, because Conan, if you really get down to it, he is living in a world that is very much the kind of a world he would live in. And and thereby we get to see a lot of it through the blank slate that is his perception. Because but it also is very fitting, because it's the different aspects of the barbaric world. Kane is interesting because he's a man out of his world.
Thanks for watching, liking, and subscribing. Join me for part 5 of a conversation with Conan's compatriots, Steve Saffel and Brian D. Anderson. And don't forget to check out Brian D. Anderson's book, Conan the Child, releasing December 26th from Titan Books. And until next time, take it easy, you Stygian dogs.